everyone, I'm Ari here with Rachel, and we're your hosts for the Mirror Writer podcast. This week, we're on episode 247, and we're asking, how can you get your manuscript finished? Before we start, if you enjoy the show, please do consider checking out our coffee page. You can follow the page for free, and there are plenty of goodies for all. If you're feeling generous, a one-off donation will get you access to a few more treats, or you could even become a Merry Writer for just $2 a month. For this, you get access to all the items in our shop, including exclusive goodies, as well as access to monthly bonus episodes, all while helping to support our podcast. If that's not your style, but you still enjoy the show, then please do subscribe wherever you're listening if you haven't already, and do consider dropping us a like on YouTube. It really does help. Okay, I've already forgot what this episode's about. Oh yeah, finishing your manuscript. What was really funny is I came up with this as an episode topic before I had finished my current manuscript, and I did it as a kind of push for myself, thinking, get your manuscript finished, and then you can talk about how to get your manuscript finished. And I can say, as of recording this back in August, I did actually manage that. It was touch and go. Like, I finished it like a day ago or 2 days ago, but it's done. And the reason it was such an intensity was because it's a beast of a manuscript at over 137,000 words. But anyway, we're going to talk about how to finish a manuscript, mainly because I know there are a lot of writers who start writing, come up with great ideas, start drafting, outlining, but sometimes they just don't finish. And it can be tough. So we're going to share some tips, and hopefully some of them will help you.
First, congratulations on finishing your manuscript. Yay! Everybody give Ari a round of applause.
Woo!
Yay!
Didn't think it was going to happen. Never thought it was going to happen. Not this one. It was too big and too annoying.
See, it happens. Things happen. You persevered. You kept at it.
I did.
And you did.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of procrastination in that. Like, I really had to fight the procrastination, but yeah. So let's talk about how to get it finished. Are you stuck somewhere? Are you constantly editing? Believe me, I get it. I have been there. How do you get it finished? You write it. I'm not that much of a dick. I'm not just going to leave it at that. You need to figure out what works for you. And I appreciate that sounds like such a cop-out. Like, whatever works for you. There is no fix. And there isn't. It's like you have to figure out your time and your responsibilities, and you have to be aware of things like that, and you have to analyze them and work with what you've got, because everybody's life is different, everybody's situation is different. And I could sit here saying, well, I wrote like 1,000 words every hour for 6 hours straight every day. I didn't. But if I did, that doesn't matter, because you probably don't have 6 hours straight to write 1,000 words. So it doesn't work like that. So the first step for me is figure out what works for you, your system, your schedule, whether that is grabbing 5 minutes here and there, whether that is putting the kids to bed and writing at the evening, whether it's getting up early, whether it's just writing at weekends so that you're not feeling like everything is backing up behind you. That's what you need to think about.
I mean, yeah, I know we say it all the time that that you have to do whatever works best for you and your current project, but it is true. You have to play around with your real life responsibilities, your real life responsibilities. I should say your day-to-day life responsibilities, and just figure out your purpose with writing and where you see this novel going. And if you see it being published someday, then you got to treat it like a special project, and you need to put in the time and the work and the effort, and you need to figure out that balance and squeeze it into your life. And I think setting that schedule, absolutely, yeah, it helps. And it's going to change. A schedule that you set for yourself one month may be very different the following month. I mean, for me, I nanny during the school year. So my summers, June, July, and August, those are my prime time. Those months are my prime time to get as much writing done as possible and make as much progress as possible with all of my creative projects. Because during the school year, I lose my afternoons. So I'm able to get more done during the days in the summers. So I have 2 different types of writing schedules, one for the summer and one for the rest of the year.
I really like that, the idea of having separate ones, because I'm the same. Not for that, but like as we get closer to Christmas, business can often crank up, especially if you're selling stuff. You get the kind of mad Christmas rush that starts in like September, sometimes even earlier. And I have to be thinking about that with my shop. So I will definitely lose time there. But like the last few months, it was a little bit quieter. So I had more time to work with the quieter time and think, yeah, I can give myself more writing time. I can force myself to sit down and actually do it. So yeah, definitely. I like the idea of 2 separate schedules to kind of keep you on track. The other thing is sacrifice. And I know we don't like saying it and we don't like doing it, but sometimes if you want to get somewhere, you have to be willing to sacrifice something, whether that is watching TV or going out or spending every evening with the family. Obviously, no one is saying closet yourself away and write every single evening and morning and weekend and don't see anybody, don't see family or friends, and do anything for yourself. That's a little too much. But you might have to be like, okay, a couple of days a week, I'm not going to be sitting and watching TV with you because I'm going to be writing and working on something. And I mean, as I said, thankfully, I was writing during a time when my business was a bit quieter anyway. There's always a bit of a lull in summer, thankfully. And I use that. If it had got a bit busier, or if I'd have wanted to make it a bit busier, I could have probably put a bit more effort in. I could have made new products. I could have done more marketing, but I didn't, because I wanted to give the writing all the focus rather than constantly splitting my focus between the business and the writing. And I have sacrificed that. I've been accepting that that's what I did. And now that the manuscript is off with the betas, I am now going to be putting more attention back to the business. And that's what you have to do. You have to be willing to sacrifice. It's got to be a balance, though. Don't go stupid with it to the point where you have no enjoyment other than the writing and you never see anything and you're falling out with your partner or your family or whatever because they never see you. But sometimes you have to be willing to give something up, at least until you can get it finished.
Well, yeah, you have to prioritize the writing, but make sure that you do so on a scale. Like, list all of your things that take priority in your life: friends, family, work, writing, anything else that goes on in your life, and slot the writing in somewhere. What, out of all the things that you have to do, what can writing take priority over? And what can writing not take priority over? And we talked about this before in our, I think, our budgeting episode, whenever the heck that was. I think it was like 138 or something like that, or in the 130s. I don't even know. But in that episode, I do remember saying that, when you take out money to save to self-publish your novel or to hire an editor or book cover designer or whatever, make sure that you can, save up a little each week or each month, whatever you could do. But if it gets to a point that, like, you have a higher credit card bill for whatever reason, pay that first. If you have to skip a month or skip a week of setting money aside for your novel, that's okay. You have to pay your bills first. And it's kind of the same thing with making sacrifices and prioritizing your writing. Make sure that your writing prioritizes stuff that can be over prioritized, if that makes sense. I think I just made that word up, but I'm going with it.
Yeah, it's like if you need to go and see the doctor, don't be like, well, I'll put it off until I finish the manuscript. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, like, don't cancel your doctor's appointment because it cuts into your writing time, even though that would be ideal.
Exactly. Just sit and write in the waiting room. They make you wait anyway, so you might as well get that, that hour back. Okay, next point, I would suggest create systems that work for you. I appreciate it's similar to the other one, but just stay with me. Work out your time management. I was shocked at how long I thought it would take. And by that, I mean, I didn't think I would. I had gave myself like a few months to from getting the manuscript finished, draft 1, to going through my alpha reader, to putting his notes through, to going through it again and getting it ready for betas. I was completely wrong with how much time it would be. I was like, yeah, a couple of weeks. No, because stuff happens, things come up. You need to always give yourself wiggle room and you need to have good management. And to be honest, that sometimes comes on the second story, because sometimes you have to figure it out on the first story and go, wow, I thought it'd take me like a month and it's taken 6, or I thought it'd take 6 months and it's taken 2 years, whatever it is. Or whatever you think the time you're going to need is, add on to it. It's better to over assume the time and be like, wow, I was well into that, than to like, yeah, it'll only take me a month, and then it drags on and you get almost like disappointed and stressed out and frustrated with yourself because you thought you'd be done and you aren't. And with that, be willing to break your time down into small segments. I love writing for hours. I am very much, when I get in the flow, I love it. And flow is brilliant. If you can get in flow, it's perfect. However, life is too shitty to always get in flow. I mean, I don't even have kids. I can't imagine how anyone writes with kids banging on the door and wanting attention and needing something. I have bad enough with cats crying at the door for attention. So be willing to give 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, especially for things like editing. If you're editing and you've just got notes, all you need is one sheet with the notes. Sit down, put those notes through, and then get up and do something else. Be willing to use small chunks of time rather than like, oh, I have to sit down for 3 hours, because who the hell has 3 hours altogether? Very few people.
I appreciate that you use 3 hours as an example, because I was going to add to this point that I wrote the other day for 3 hours straight, because I don't usually time myself when I write, and because I end up racing the clock, or I end up just staring at the clock and being like, oh, I still have like 32 minutes left, and whatever. But a lot of times I write with music, and I usually turn on Nintendo Radio on YouTube, and it's a 24-hour live stream. So sometimes I'll just write for a little bit, or sometimes it's, the timing varies. But my sister found a YouTube channel called Ambient Worlds, and they have playlists, and some of their playlists are the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. So instead of putting on my Lord of the Rings playlist that has all of the soundtracks from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, that's like, I don't know, a couple of days long, I can just go on Ambient Worlds on YouTube and go to anywhere. I could just go to the Shire, hit that video, and it's like 2-3 hours long. And I was pleasantly surprised at how focused I was just listening to that atmosphere. I got a lot done in 3 hours, but I'm not saying you have to do hours at a time of writing. I agree with Ari. Break down your work time into smaller sections, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you could do, even 20 minutes. Any little bit helps. And it doesn't have to be consecutive either. You don't have to do 10 minutes here, take a break, and then another 10 minutes, and then take another break. You could just do 10 minutes in the morning, go about your daily routine, go to work, come home, write for another 10 minutes, write for 10 minutes on your lunch break at work. I mean, just do it whenever you can.
No, that's it. It's like I used to always be like, oh, unless I've got like at least 45 minutes, there's no point. There's no point in sitting down and doing it. It's just one of those things. And then when I got my manuscript back from my alpha and he had put all these notes on, I was sat there, and it was this huge, because obviously it was all done on paper. It was this huge document. And all I kept thinking was, I am so overwhelmed. And then I just sat down and I'm like, I don't have any time, because I had to go out somewhere. And I just thought, screw it. I put my computer on for 10 minutes. And I actually got through like several pages in 10 minutes. And I was convinced that I wouldn't have managed to do that unless I had 45 minutes. Obviously, some of his notes were massive, in which case I put a little post-it flag on. If there was something that I was going to need to sit for like an hour or two and go through and then maybe do a rewrite. So that's another system. That was another system I created, where instead of being like, right, well, I've got all my edits to go through and I'm going to go through one at a time. I didn't do that. I went through my edits, and as soon as I hit a hard one or something that I knew I was going to have to do a lot more work to understand, because sometimes it was like, this whole needs to be rewritten, or what the hell? I don't think this should even be here. It needs to be earlier. I put a post-it flag on it, and then I just carried on. Because in the past, I would have started on that. Even if I didn't have enough time in the day, I would have started on it, got annoyed with it, frustrated, and then had to stop in the middle. Instead, I went and I did all the easy edit, the things where I'd spelt something wrong, or I had missed some continuity, or it was literally one word, one line that needed to be rewritten. And by the end, I had a nicer, cleaner manuscript, and then I had a huge pile of paper covered in flags. And it was easier, because then I can say like, right, well, now I'll make sure I've got this much time, and I'll see how many flags I can get through. And again, some of it was actually quicker than I realized. If I'd have gone from start to finish and just tried to work through all of them, I know I would have screwed up.
I appreciate that you did it that way, because whenever I do stuff like that, I always try to do the harder ones or the more time-consuming ones first to make it to kind of get the hard part out of the way. It's like with the podcast, when I have multiple episodes to edit, I tend to edit the longer one first rather than doing them in order, which would make sense. I should do that, because then I confuse myself. But I tend to edit the longer ones first, or I try to, because then when I look at the rest of the work I have to do and be like, oh, this one's only 22 minutes. That's not too bad. I could get that done. And it just makes you feel better. But I also really like how you do the easier ones first, because if you have to make math easy, if you have like 100 tabs in your manuscript and you go through all the easier ones, the ones that take 5 minutes, the ones that take 30 seconds to fix a quick typo, and that's, I don't know, 66 of those flags, then you get all that done in however long it takes you. And then you look at the rest of the flags and it's like, wow, I got over 50% of my edits done. Look at me go. And you just feel more productive that way.
Exactly. I mean, the reason I did it that way is because when he put his notes on, he just wrote in a different color pen. And then as I went through, when I found a difficult one, I put a flag on it. If I had have done the difficult ones first, I'd have had to go through all the notes and find the difficult ones and flag them up. which to me would have been another thing to do. And I don't want to do extra. So it was as I was doing the easy stuff, I just added the flag and did it that way. But yeah, it's a weird thing, but weirdly it helped. It seriously helped.
I was gonna say it works.
Okay, the last point I'm going to make, because there are extra points, but we'll probably do a bonus episode. So, if you want to hear extra, you should go and visit our coffee page and possibly sign up for at least a month. Shameless plug, I know. One of the other things that can really help is figure out what your issues are and go into the minutiae, right? I know we usually say like, don't do that, but no, go into the minutiae. What are you stuck with? Is it a character? Is it a plot line? Is it a specific scene? Is it the whole middle that's sagging? Make a note of all the issues that are slowing you down and stopping your manuscript. When you sit down to write it, when you sit down to edit it, what are you struggling with? Figure that out and put it on a list. I like to put notes at the end of every chapter for myself, and then I actually use them for my betas as well. But just like every issue, and if you're not sure, just put a bracket, put what you like, need to describe this here or need to fix this plot line, and keep going. I think one of the issues is we can get stuck constantly going back and trying to fix issues while we're writing. Let's be honest, the editor in us just loves to tinker with our writing. And I say this as someone who really struggles with the editor. They just are always in my head. So you have to be intentional. You have to literally go in. And as you catch yourself going, I'm just going to go back up, and nope, you have to pull that back, get back to the manuscript and keep writing. And even when you're editing, start at the beginning and move through. Don't get halfway through and go, oh, I missed a bit. I need to go back, put a note at the bottom of that chapter, and then back to the point you were at. If you go back to chapter 2 and start editing more while you're working through the first set of edits, you'll never stop. And I say this as someone who has way too many manuscripts partially finished because I couldn't stop the editor from taking over and just tweaking forever. So you have to be intentional to stop that crap. And I said, yeah, you have to work out exactly what is the issue. It might mean that you have to cut a whole scene or a whole chapter or a whole character out. It might mean that you need to go and get more advice. You might actually have to reach out to a writer and be like, okay, I am stuck because of this and I can't get through. And there is no issue in asking for help. Most of the writers community, I'm going to say, are pretty cool and pretty helpful. You should be able to reach out to them. I am going to make one point. If you're reaching out to people that you don't know that well and you're asking for assistance and you're asking for help, can you please be friendly and understanding that you are taking their time? The number of people who will reach out going, I need help, I want to do this. And it's like, not even a hi or a, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're probably busy, but please can I ask blah, blah, blah. It's almost this entitlement that comes up, not with everyone, but there's been a few, actually, last few years, people reaching out and just being, it's almost like demanding assistance rather than asking for assistance. And if someone is unable to or unwilling to help, that's okay. They are allowed to do that. Thank them for their time and move on and ask somebody else. Don't get shitty with them if they can't. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they're doing. They might be very busy. So I'm just going to put that as a point. I know it sounds like a real dick thing to say, but there has been a little bit of kind of like, oh yeah, reach out to other writers. And then it's kind of becomes demands. I need help. You need to tell me how to do this. Nobody needs to, but they will try to most of the time. If you're nice and polite and friendly and not a jerk. Okay.
I wouldn't say it's a mean thing to say. I think it's a good thing to note because, again, we're speaking from experience here. It's part of the reason why I don't beta read anymore, but I digress. When you mentioned the consciously stop the editor, this is why I edit with a bunch of fancy colored pens, and each color is its own element of the story. Like dark blue is for character development, light blue is for formatting, green is for setting, red is just general typos and so on and so forth. So that when I do my first read through of the manuscript, whatever sticks out in my head that needs fixing, I take the appropriate colored pencil and I leave a note and I figure that out. And then the next time I go through the manuscript, I'll go through one color at a time, or sometimes I'll go through one chapter at a time with all the colors, but sometimes it's easier to just go through it's easier to see the string of character development all at once without focusing on anything else that's going on in the story. And that's not always the easiest way to go about it. Like I said, it depends on the manuscript, but that's how I do it. And I also just want to make a note that this has nothing to do with anything, but Ari said, figure out what your issues are. And I gotta laugh at that because my issue for finishing my manuscript is knowing that when it's done, then that means I have more work to do and I have to mark it and I have to find editors and stuff like that. It's not even the actual writing. It's like, I want to finish this, but if I do, there's other stuff that comes after, and that's like, it's not finished. Like the writing part is finished, but it's not finished. I just had to laugh at that. That's all.
No, that is true. It isn't finished. I think there's like steps. The first thing is just to get the end of the first draft. That is it. Just one draft. Whether you go back and forward and do a little bit of editing, I'm not going to have a go at anyone for doing that. I do that. You just got to, again, stop that editor from doing too much. But I would have that as your first goal. Just get the first draft finished. Then go take a week and then just get a second draft, which is just, in my eyes, the second draft comes from you putting your own edit through. So you do one quick edit of it and then you do that. Then give it to somebody else to read, preferably someone who knows you, who you trust, to do a quick alpha read. Put it aside. But yeah, right, Rachel's right. It's quite overwhelming knowing the steps that come next. To finish isn't finished. There's so much more ahead of it. So it's almost like try and put blinkers on. Try not to even think about that. You're just finishing draft 1. You're just editing draft 1. You're just editing draft 2. You're just having a nervous breakdown. You're just crying in the corner. It's okay. But yeah, we did decide to cut this episode a bit shorter. I say short, it's probably really long. There are extra points. We are going to put them in a bonus episode because I can't have any more massively long episodes that I've got to edit. I just can't cope with it anymore. So I appreciate this is probably not the best episode, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Before we leave, though, and if you do want to learn more about us, the podcast, opportunities to be a guest on the show, why would anyone try and be a guest? I don't know, but people do. Please do check out our website. It's over at themerrywriterpodcast.podbean.com. You'll find a lot of pages and weird stuff over there, and obviously all the episodes. We'll turn it over to you guys now. To writers who have completed their stories, what tips do you have for finishing your manuscripts? Do let us know in the comments so that we can talk about it and that other people can read them, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to know any tips and tricks that can help. Remember, we do release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing changes coming soon to the podcast because it's our last episode of the year. Woo! I appreciate it's going out on Christmas Day, and we don't expect anyone to listen to it on Christmas Day, but please do listen to it eventually. To ensure you don't miss it, do hit the subscribe button on your way out. And as always, thanks for listening to the Mayor Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Half Empty Notebooks. We keep buying more or getting them for Christmas. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.